I've been getting flooded with emails and comments by people asking about my wife and I's COVID experience and about being vaccinated. I was initially going to make a video about our COVID experience, but decided against it because I didn't want my channel getting attacked and demonetized because maybe I mentioned COVID in a light that YouTube doesn't agree with. But I've been getting so many COVID related questions lately that I decided to go ahead and make a video. This will be the first video that I've ever made that's not about hunting, fishing, or outdoor gear. I'll start with a question from one of my subscribers, Marvin from Miami, Florida. Marvin from Florida asked me, I saw that you and your wife had COVID and your wife was in really bad shape. Were you guys vaccinated? Can you explain your reasoning for getting or not getting the vaccination? If you could go back in time, would you get the vaccine? You're a smart person with a lot of common sense who doesn't get swayed by political talk. So I value your opinion. Thank you for your videos. I really enjoy them. Well, Marvin, that's a complex question, and I hope that you research the issue yourself and come to your own conclusions based on your condition, your personal condition. Don't make a decision this important based off of what I say or do. But I get your question, though. It's hard to trust anything today. Science has merged with politics and corporate interest and is currently generated by pure profit motive rather than the search for the truth, which is what science should be about. Anthony Fauci can't be trusted at all, and he even admits that he lies to the public for our own good. And the CDC is even being disingenuous by downplaying the benefits of natural immunity by coming up with that junk study out of Kentucky. And the reality is that the same exact people who are trying to save us right now are likely the ones who created this problem in the first place. Then on the other side of the coin, you have a lot of fear mongering from people on the right, overplaying the frequency of side effects from the vaccine and just spewing these ridiculous conspiracy theories like vaccines contain magnets and you're getting the mark of the beast. The craziness from both sides of the political spectrum, the government lies, big pharma profit motives, a polarized media, and a dishonest scientific community make sorting out the truth damn near impossible for us. And you have to do your own objective analysis and decide for yourself whether you want the vaccine or not. And as Americans, we should have the right to make that decision without it being forced upon us. I'll start by first declaring that I'm not one of those anti-vax people. I've never had polio or smallpox, but I imagine that it's not a delightful experience. Honestly, I had a wait and see and cautious attitude towards these experimental vaccines when they came out. But after most of my safety concerns were kind of set aside, when I reviewed actual data and the actual frequency of side effects, for the first 6 months of use with these vaccines, I decided that I was going to get the vaccine this summer. If for nothing else, it'd make international travel and going to events less problematic. But by July, it became pretty apparent that the vaccines didn't prevent you from getting the new Delta variant. Most of my employees at my business who were testing positive were already vaccinated. So at that point, I started to believe that the virus had mutated to the point where the vaccines were no longer effective. So I made the personal decision not to get vaccinated at that time. The decision that I made had nothing to do with politics, conspiracy theories, or fear. I made an informed choice by researching the issue from every angle and perspective. At the end of August, though, my wife and I got the Delta variant and had to cancel our Alaska adventure, our fishing and hunting trip that took almost a year of planning. I only suffered for a couple of days, but I'm still recovering my strength and cardio after the experience. After I tested positive, I really didn't feel anything but maybe a headache initially for 2 days. As a matter of fact, I was out in my swimming pool enjoying life after I tested positive. Then on day 3, I got a high fever that would last for a couple of days, but that was the worst of it for me. My body, though, ached so bad that I couldn't even sleep at night for a few days. At day 3, though, I also lost my sense of taste and smell. And let me tell you, it's hard to eat with no sense of taste or smell. Luckily, the virus never spread to my lungs and I never had a cough. By day 5, my symptoms were pretty much gone, but I felt extremely fatigued and I just had no cardio. But, just walking to the end of my backyard to feed my chickens and collect eggs had me hunched over trying to breathe. Even after 3 weeks later right now, I still don't have my cardio back. But in the grand scheme of things, I think I got off pretty easy. I only suffered for a couple of days. It never went to my lungs and chest, and I never needed any medical attention. The sickest I've ever been in my life is when I got dengue fever in Central America a long time ago. And COVID was basically a walk in the park compared to that for me. So I got pretty lucky. My wife, unfortunately, wasn't so lucky. She was hospitalized twice and suffered bad for about 2 full weeks. Even though she tested negative at day 11, she's still recovering and it'll be a while before she's 100% again. Give you a little chronology of her COVID experience. On day 1, she woke up with a sore throat and a little bit of a stuffy nose, and she immediately went down to get tested at our local Rite Aid, and she tested positive. On day 2, a cough started to develop. It wasn't a bad cough, but a cough was starting to develop. On day 3, she was running 102-degree temperature and was just coughing uncontrollably. I'm going to interrupt my wife's story right now to let you in on something that the average person probably isn't prepared to hear. You see these TV doctors and politicians and celebrities constantly telling everybody to get treatment right away. At the first sign of sickness, go down and get treatment. We're inundated by stories of celebrities and millionaires getting this great treatment right when they get the first signs of being sick. But you know what? That's not the way the real world works. I'm here to tell you that for the average working man that pays way too much for crappy insurance like Blue Shield and Aetna, you're not going to get early treatment at the first sign of COVID. You probably won't get any treatment until they determine there's a threat of death. The whole idea of going to the hospital at the first sign of COVID and getting these great antiviral treatments and other cutting edge treatments is a fantasy for the average working American. So back to my wife's story. On day 2, my wife called our insurance COVID hotline and got some call center in India where a guy we can barely understand told her to drink lots of fluids and get some rest. And this is also the day that her sense of taste went away. By day 3, she had a 102-degree temperature and was coughing uncontrollably. Once again, the insurance company doctors said the same thing. Drink lots of fluids, get some rest, and actually told us don't go to the hospital. But it got so bad that I put my foot down and I took my wife to the hospital anyway, where she sat for hours alone in agony, and I wasn't even allowed in there with her. So after sitting for over 3 hours with a 102-degree temperature and just coughing so bad that she threw up in the waiting room, she finally got to see a doctor. And after the doctors ran some tests and did an x-ray, they determined that she developed pneumonia in her lungs and she was in pretty bad shape. So they pumped her full of azithromycin to treat her pneumonia, and they sent her home. And there went my wife into the emergency room. Good luck, my love. Day 4 was absolute misery for my wife. She had huge fevers, lots of coughing and hacking, bad headaches, diarrhea, basically everything you could have. And we called the hospital, and they specifically told us not to go to the hospital unless her oxygen dips below 90. You know, we didn't have an oxygen meter, so my wife has a friend who's a nurse, and she brought over an oxygen meter for us to use. The morning of day 5 was a complete disaster for my wife. About mid-morning, I found my wife laying on the bathroom floor, and she could barely speak. We tested her oxygen level, and it was at 67. So 911 was immediately called, and an ambulance came and took my wife away. You know, once again, because I had COVID, I was left sitting at home by myself worrying. My wife finally started improving on day 7. The fevers finally went away, and she got the strength to get out of bed and walk around the house finally. By day 8, the cough subsided, and she was completely out of the woods, in my opinion, at that point. She tested negative on day 11, but 24 days later, her lungs are still clearing out, and she's still very weak. She basically went through hell. And before you ask, from day 1, we started taking vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and multivitamins religiously. But I also personally did some of the breathing exercises that people recommend, but my wife didn't do those at all. And we both took Mucinex for our fevers, which worked really good, and just regular Tylenol for the headaches. And if your fevers are kind of mild, the Tylenol will take care of that for you too, so you can break your fever and actually get some sleep. And of course, we ordered through Instacart cases and cases of water, and we went through, I don't know how many cases of water, but we were hydrating really well through the whole thing. But in my opinion, the vitamins were just absolutely useless. You know, we both got sick and didn't feel better until the virus ran its natural course. So I really personally don't feel like the vitamins really did anything. I don't think they hurt. I don't think they really helped. The Mucinex and the Tylenol, though, did do a great job at managing the symptoms. Ironically, I actually thought that the breathing exercises helped me. You know, the virus never got a hold of my lungs and my chest like it did with my wife. And my oxygen levels stayed pretty good the whole time. So I think the breathing exercises worked, but I'm not 100% positive that all these vitamins did any good at all. So now to the big question that my subscriber asked. If you can go back in time, would you get the vaccine? Well, I think the answer to that is yes, we would get the vaccine. And before you get mad at me, Here's the reasoning. There's basically two facts right now surrounding the effectiveness of these vaccines. Fact number one, is that the current vaccines will not prevent you from getting the Delta variant and getting sick. These vaccines were engineered to fight a now extinct version of the virus. But we also have fact number two. And fact number two is that although the current vaccines won't prevent you from getting COVID anymore, they will make the symptoms of COVID much less severe. So trust me, if being vaccinated would have taken away 40, 50% of the severity of my wife's experience, it would have been well worth it. You know, we both would have just jumped on those needles knowing what we know now. And you're probably wondering one last thing. Am I going to get vaccinated now? Well, surprisingly, the answer to that is not at this time. The only benefit of recovering from this new variant is that I get this outstanding natural immunity now. If some future vaccine proves to be safe and effective against future variants, I'll undoubtedly consider it again. So that's our COVID story and my opinion on the vaccines. Remember, this is just my commentary and my opinion. Don't make decisions based on what CNN or Fox News or MSNBC tell you. Take what the government says with a grain of salt and never make your decisions based on what a guy like me on YouTube tells you. Do your own research objectively while considering all different points of view, and consult your personal doctor if you trust them. Just be mindful that some of us are really lucky and getting COVID is no big deal, while others find themselves in a life or death battle. No matter what opinion you have, COVID is a real thing, and you should have some type of strategy for dealing with it.